As much as we can animate a plant to see and think and adapt to its environment, in real life they can't. Or can they? Okay, they can't see or walk or wave or jump or anything like that, but they can actually adapt to their environment. And that's exactly what we're looking at in this video. We're looking at two types of plant adaptations, the first one being phototropism, the next one being gravitropism. So let's take a look at that right now. Okay, so before we get into phototropism and gravitropism, which has to do with how the stem's going to adapt to the environment, we have to talk about how the stem has any structure anyway, and that has to do with turgor pressure. Turgor pressure is what gives the plant structure, so instead of wilting like this, that it gives it some strength and is able to have some structure to it like this. And we're just going to simply cover this. You can cover it in more detail, but just our simple explanation of this is let's consider a plant cell. Now, there's usually lots in the plant cell, and you might think that's the nucleus, but I've removed everything from the plant cell except for the cell wall around the outside, the central vacuole in the middle, and we'll say that it's still filled of cytoplasm. So that's the basically filling of the cell. It's almost like if the cell was a water balloon, it would be the water. But I don't want you to get too confused because where the water is going to be stored is in the central vacuole, that blue thing right there. And in this case right here, it's not very full. The central vacuole is kind of small. It's not storing very much water in it. But now we're going to say, what if you did increase its amount of water and put the water inside that central vacuole? It's going to fill up and get bigger. The details on how that would happen with hypertonic and hypotonic and osmosis was covered in an earlier lesson. I'll put a link to that up here. You can click on that for types of transport. But let's say we get the water in, it fills up the central vacuole. That's going to apply some pressure because remember, all right here, the cytoplasm was full of fluid as well. So now that you just increase the size of the vacuole, you're going to increase the pressure on that cytoplasm. That's going to push on the cell wall and it's going to cause it to take a full kind of almost ballooned shape where it's got rigid pressure on the outside because of all that water that flowed into the vacuole. And that's why the plant cell has this thick cell wall, so it can take that pressure, and with that pressure it can grow completely upright and have some structure in that stem. An animal cell doesn't have a cell wall, so it wouldn't be able to take this pressure, so animals usually have bones and things like that to give them structure. Now that we covered how the stem's got some structure, let's look at how it adapts. So here's our first adaptation. It is the plant bending towards the sun, bending over, pointing towards the sun, so it can do photosynthesis as efficiently as possible, getting that sunlight. And this adaptation to bend towards the sun is called phototropism. As much as this is just a cartoon, it does actually do this in real life. It bends its leaves and its flower and stem towards the sun. So just put that in the notes there, plant bends towards the sunlight. This is called positive phototropism because positive going towards the sunlight. If it's going away from the sunlight, that'd be negative. But again, the plant wants to go towards the sunlight. As much as that's interesting that it happens, let's take a look at how that happens. Okay, we're going to go over some experiments. The first experiment we're going to go over is Darwin's experiment, where he was just kind of playing around with the plant, changing things to it to see if it still bends towards the sun. We're first going to start with just a control, and that means just a normal plant, grow it, and yeah, it bends towards the sun. Kind of like what we were expecting, shows phototropism. The next one, now we're going to start manipulating it. We're going to remove the top of the plant. Keep the bottom the same, chop off the top, and basically just goes straight up. We don't get that same bend if we've removed the top of the plant. So that's interesting. Seems like it has to do something with the top. Now let's try, well, what if we don't chop it off, but what if we cover the top? So we're going to cover it with maybe a bag or some sort of cylinder here where it's completely covered and it grows straight up. Once again, we don't get any bending. That's interesting, but what if it wasn't maybe that it was covered? Maybe it was this material was like suffocating it from oxygen. Maybe it wasn't that it was blocked out from the sun. So let's try a clear one. If we cover it with a clear cover, let's see what happens there. Oh, that one actually still bends. So this is telling us it probably does have something to do with the sunlight, kind of like we would have imagined. The light going through the cover here still making it bend. So it's not that there's something on the plant. It seems like the light is what causes it to bend. But one last check to make sure it wasn't that kind of dark cover. What if we put that dark cover around the stem? Maybe there was something with that was impeding it. Let's put that dark cover around the stem, and no, it still seems to bend. So basically what we get from all of these different experiments is it seems like it has to do with the top, and it seems like it has to do with light. So how's that happening? The top seems to be sending a signal to the stem to bend it towards the sunlight. So our next experiment wants to kind of look a bit closer at that. It's the Boysen-Jensen. I'm going to move over to the other side. Okay, and from here, the Boysen-Jensen experiment was trying to look at what's going on through that stem. So we're going to look at two separate cases here. The first one, we're going to insert a layer of material in between the stem, and it's made of gelatin, which is a permeable material, and we're just going to insert that. So we're going to stick that into the stem kind of like this, and you see over there that it still bends towards the sunlight. So what's that saying? So that's saying that information somehow was signaled from the top of the plant through the stem to cause it to bend. That's what it seems like so far. But what if you stopped it from flowing? What would happen there? So now let's insert some mica, something that doesn't allow chemicals to flow through it. But in that case, and we still get some bending on top, at the top part of the plant. But as soon as it reaches the mica, the information isn't be able to send through there, and there's no bend in the lower part of the stem. So overall from both these experiments has to do with the top signaling something to the stem. Let's take even a further closer look at that with our next scientist. Back over to this side. Okay, next we're looking at Francis Witt. And Francis Witt wanted to look at what that chemical signal could be that is transferred through the stem. And looking at plant chemicals, he found that there's a chemical in plants that causes the stem or causes the plant to grow. And so we called it auxin, which means to grow. So we call this chemical auxin. If you place it on different parts, it seems to cause more growth. But how does that contribute to bending? Well, I'm going to look at the two sides of this plant and say that the sun's hitting the top there. We said that was important. And then we're going to look at the sides of the stem. I'm going to kind of illuminate this one here to show that this one is the more lit up side, the light side. And this one is kind of like the dark side, kind of like from Star Wars there, the dark side on the other side of the stem. And so what he found is at the top, if that's going to be sensing light on this side, the light side of that flower, it is going to signal the auxin to go to the opposite side of the plant. So if I move it towards the dark side of the plant, it's going to increase more growth on the dark side. So if the dark side is going to grow more, we're going to get elongation of the stem on that side, not as much growth on the light side, which is going to curve it and bend it in this direction as the dark side grows more. And then it's going to bend towards the sun, which is phototropism. Okay, we have one more type of tropism, which is called gravitropism. So what this is, we have the tree growing out of a hill, and instead of growing off like an angle, like we might think that it would, perpendicular to the ground, it curves, it goes upwards against gravity. So this is gravitropism, and the stem is going to have negative gravitropism. So remember, positive phototropism was going towards the sun. So negative is going to be away. It's going like away from gravity, the opposite direction of gravity. That's going to be what's happening in the stem. But there's another part of the tree that we often don't think of. That's the roots. So I'll put in some kind of roughly drawn roots here, but they're going in the opposite direction. They're going to want to grow down because that's where the water is going to get pulled by gravity. So they got the best chance of getting water if they can go in the same direction that it's going to be falling. So the roots are going to go in the same direction. They're going to show positive gravitropism and go in the same direction. To look at why, we're going to look at the auxin again. I'm just going to focus on the stem part. The roots would be a bit of a different story. We're not going to go into that. But looking at the stem, let's see that it's initially growing kind of just perpendicular out of the hill like this. And then I'm going to throw my auxin in there. And right now, we're not going to worry about any sunlight, nothing being pulled by phototropism. We're just saying that there's the auxin in the middle of the stem. And some of this would be subject to gravity and fall due to gravity. If that happens and you develop more auxin on the bottom side, once again, that's going to grow more. Not as much growth on the top. We get the same result where we get a bend, and now it's growing upwards in the opposite direction of gravity. And that's all we have for today's video, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you found that useful and enjoyable. If you're looking for more lessons, I have more lessons and complete courses at the channel right here. And you can find the latest video just posted right here. So thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.